So for those of you who might be new to ACMP or the Southern California chapter, we are a regional chapter of a global organization, the Association of Change Management Professionals. And the things that we offer are professional development, webinars, and eventually, again, live speaker events and instructional events. We have opportunities for our community to be keynote speakers. If you'd like to be a speaker or do a webinar, please reach out to me. We would really love our local community to participate in sharing what you know. We will offer discounts to our ACMP SoCal members for exclusive events as we go through the year. We have, for organizations, we have organizations that sponsor our events. So there are opportunities for organizations to really specify their commitment to change management in the community by sponsoring us. We will have networking activities, and we offer discounts for professional certifications like LaMarche and ProSci, and plenty of volunteer opportunities. So please, again, reach out to me if you're interested in volunteering. I've got some fabulous volunteers who help me out a lot and are great participants. So please let me know if you can do that. And if your organization, once we open up, can host an event, the in-person events are great, and we've had great organizations that have hosted us. So you can do that as well. Okay, next, Alex. Our upcoming events. In San Diego, we're starting what we're calling First Tuesdays. So you will have predictability in when our events will be. If we don't have a speaker, we will have a virtual happy hour, or when we open up, we'll have a regular happy hour. And then some months we will have speaker events or learning events, but at least you can lock this into your calendar that you know the first Tuesday of every month we'll have a San Diego event. The first one is our virtual happy hour on May 5th. And the link here, we will use a tiny URL so there's some consistency. So the mnemonic now is ACMP SD6. Our Los Angeles presence is sponsoring Third Thursdays. Are you seeing a theme here? And their first happy hour is the third Thursday of May 21st. If you register at the ACMP SoCalChapter.org website, you can get on our mailing list, so you can find out about our events. You don't have to be an ACMP member in order to attend our events, but it's highly encouraged. Okay, Alex, next. The most important thing about our local chapter is we have an opportunity to take something global and bring it to a smaller, more personalized group. So what we really focus on in our chapter is to help our community learn, to connect with each other in a more local, personal way, and to celebrate. We really like to celebrate each other's successes. So please let us know. We have features on our newsletter when people get a certification or finish a program that they're presenting or get a promotion or win a contract. So please let us know about those. We want to celebrate with you. We all need something to celebrate. And with that, I will now introduce our speaker. Our speaker is Alex Yates, and Alex is a San Diego native who made what I feel is the unfortunate choice of moving to Chicago. But Alex has over 20 years of change leadership experience. He has experience leading change in a broad variety of industries. He's worked in banking and consumer packaged goods and even in Major League Baseball, which is kind of fun. I know Alex to be a lifelong learner. He has a really energetic, creative approach to everything he does. And he shares my passion for learning about neuroscience. And so I'm really excited to have him here to share some of that with you. And at that, I will give it to Alex.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alex, and happy to be here. Less about me, and let's get to this presentation. We are going to do some content. We're going to do a breakout of groups so you guys can talk about what we reviewed, and then bring it together as a group and hopefully generate some insights and you guys walk away with some real learning, but hopefully some good dialogue along the way. Because brains crave social interaction, we're already 10 minutes in. We'll try to get to the breakout within the next 10 minutes. So bear with me. So I see we got a lot of great responses to the what are you drinking, red or white, craft or light. You guys do me proud with all the craft responses in the chat. Living in Chicago now, which I never thought was happening. I am very proud to see Chicago breweries are all over Chicago bars and liquor stores. So very proud to see you guys keeping that going. So we're going to get into a why, what, and how about neuroscience, and just a friendly brain tip. You know, and especially in a time like this and, you know, global pandemic, hopefully a once in a generation, there's a lot of uncertainty, and that word has been going around a ton. And when you can't provide certainty about process, provide certainty about the process before content. And so that's a lot of like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll be in touch with you next Wednesday. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll follow up with you the following Wednesday. And so if you let people know exactly, you know, what they can predict, we're prediction making machines, and that really helps us calm down a lot. So why do we need to balance the art with the science? You know, I went to San Diego State University, and I used to, you know, work right here at Hepner Hall on Montezuma Mesa. In fact, I used to teach in the classrooms right here in the middle of the Campanile building. And at the time, there was, you know, Stephen Covey's 7 Highly Habits, and there was Cotter's 8 Steps of Change. And there was all these numbers that seemed random. And, you know, BuzzFeed has showed how random that is with all the listicle journalism that we have these days. So, you know, Cotter was very well respected when I was in school, but then, you know, things came out like 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, and everything just became a number. It seemed really random. And, you know, at the time was also 8-minute abs. And if you saw the movie Something About Mary, he's like, I got 7-minute abs. And Ben Stiller said, well, unless someone comes up with 6. It's like, no, not 6, 7. And that's exactly how I feel about 7 Highly Habits and 8 Steps of Change and all these things. And I fell in love with neuroscience about 6 years ago. And it really blew me away because when I was at San Diego State, I used to teach graduate public speaking classes, you know, Speech 101 to students, although I think it was 103. And there would be all these surveys that we would hand out to all the freshman students, and they would take these surveys that would be then quoted in journal articles. 167 students from Southern California University stated that this is how they feel about this thing. And I thought, really, this is the science that we're bringing from the academic tower. And I just thought it was a real miss. And so I've always had skepticism about some of the research. And so I've really embraced, you know, how do you show up with hard facts for soft skills? And that's our first polling question. So if you could please respond in the chat, how do you bring evidence to your role as a change practitioner? Think of all the different ways that you talk about evidence or research or different ways to build your credibility as a change practitioner. And Vera, I'll let you call out responses as they pop up.
Yeah, so we've got leverage the data from Tom. Tom, reply again, what kind of data? We've got poll metrics, peer-reviewed studies, employee engagement and organizational health surveys, stakeholder surveys, chat responses.
Super credible. As on Twitter.
Project KPIs, roundtables. Okay, so Tom's saying in healthcare, metrics such as length of stay, readmission rates, veteran experience scores. Someone is saying quantifiable results. So, you know, that's kind of a general term. It'd be interesting to see.
Okay. Great. Appreciate the feedback. So let's look at this in terms of, you know, how business operates. There are the dimension of business drivers, and we're all aware of that. You know, as change practitioner, what are the business drivers? But those are the external forces, and I feel that they answer only part of the they're part of the equation. And I think that this global pandemic of us working from home have really exposed the need for biological drivers. I think everyone's inbox is full with at least 3 emails a day from some company who you're on their email distribution list telling you about how to work virtually and how to lead with empathy and how to be human and take time for yourself. And I think we've seen the same greatest hits for the past month. And so it's funny, as you see these new emails package up, I'm like, wow, it looks like it took a whole committee to get this email generated. But it's the same stuff that came out just 3 weeks ago saying the same stuff. And, you know, as it says at the bottom, companies reverse engineer the culture around technology tools due to sunken cost. And what's needed is to undo the old habits before the foundation of new habits. But what are those biological drivers? And again, this time of pandemic is a great time for you as a change practitioner to bring to the conversation, you know, how are people handling things? And hopefully you can get their attention and hopefully turn their neck a little bit. So mammals are social beings. You know, most of us look down at your arm and you'll see some hair on it. If you have hair on it, then that means that you cannot rely in the world without another creature taking care of you. And that's how it extends to the rest of life. You know, if you talk to your parents, you know, I'm sure that there's some projects around the house of, if only I can get some help around here. You know, we have a constant need for help and reaching out to other folks. And the lone wolf thing is the exception and not the rule. And the herd mentality of us working together and figuring things out is the way to go. If you look at modern technologies, you know, why is neuroscience a thing? If some of you have said, like, I keep hearing neuroscience this and that, I don't know what the hell it is and why is it so recent? Well, it's because the technology is really recent. You know, the funding to get MRI machines didn't happen until the 70s. We didn't get any real MRI work until the 80s. And then these caps that go on your head, fMRI, and EEGs, they didn't get really invented until 1990, which is 30 years ago. And research didn't start getting built until, you know, the 2000 and 2010. So we are at the infancy. So if you think back to the first 30 years of X-rays and the advances of X-rays in the last 125 years, imagine what we're going to learn in the next 85 years. So what we've learned from these MRI and fMRI machines is that your brain has a basic correlation, is to stay alive. And the number one thing that it organizes is to avoid threats. And an overwhelming amount of our language is negative. You know, I think it has, like, in the book Switch, How to Switch When Change is Hard, they talk about how we have approximately like 180 adjectives and 60 to 70% of them are negative. You know, we have very few positive adjectives. We have very few ways of talking positively. And if you've been at some companies, that's not surprising. And the reason why is because we have to be very specific about the language that's threatening us. And so in the times of a caveman, is it a tiger? Is it a plant? Is it a poisonous plant? Is it a prickly plant? Is it a plant that's going to eat me? Is it a big mammal? Is it an animal that's going to attack me? Or is it something that's going to gang up on me? And there's very real reason for our brain to evolve about rewards. And we're just starting to get there and understand how to speak to rewards. But a lot of it is about avoiding pain. So definitionally, just to set the table, it's the study of the brain and its impact on behavior and thinking. So we all process threats and rewards differently, but we do process them. And so what's a threat and reward for me is not a threat and reward for you. And so we need to get a little bit more specific into how do we catalog those things. So if you think about as a change agent, putting together a change agent network, there's a lot of politics involved in that. And at any sort of company, there's in-groups and out-groups. And that sense of belonging is very strong because if you're cut out of the tribe, your chance of survival goes down. And so we are now evolving not from, you know, the strongest survive, it's the strongest social networks survive. And so, you know, even as adults, you know, something as simple as finding out that a friend or an ex-coworker who you hated, who you don't even want to hang around, if they unfriend you on Facebook, it breaks your heart. It's like, God, I hate that guy. And now I feel like a jerk that I'm bothered that this person unfriended me. And so, you know, I can't imagine how it's like for younger kids going through that. But, you know, if you are not actively including, then you are actively excluding. And so when you look at engagement, you got to think of, you know, if someone gets a promotion, at our company, we've done a lot of work on communicating to people who did not get promotions, because we're a very flat company. And so congratulations to the handful of people that got a promotion, yay. But to the other people, they spend a lot of time in care and communication to make sure that they don't feel excluded and part of the out group and looking for the exit. So let me ask you this. Go to the poll. As change managers, how do you look at your change networks? How do you evaluate who the change agents are? What considerations do you need to place in an ideal world?
So go ahead and type in the chat, and I'll be looking in the chat. How do you do that right now? So, okay, so someone works in OD and is a change agent.
How did you get selected?
So Joanne, how did you get selected as a change agent, do you think?
I guess it's because you work in OD.
Pretty much. I think that's, and also I'm someone who is always going to webinars like this and looking for new ideas to bring back to my organization.
Okay.
So I think I'm in a good role, a good fit.
Yeah. When you guys are trying to get change and you go to different departments and you get a representative or two from every group, how do you determine who's part of that group for you to influence?
So we have someone that says, Suzanne says, people who are well respected and influential within the organization. We have someone who says indirect leaders, those who carry weight within the department. We have assessing the overall population and determining the appropriate size, and then working with HR on who has influence, as well as who are the strong resistors.
Nice, great responses. I know that an emerging body of work is organizational network analysis and looking at, mapping out influentials and tracking those. And as our behaviors get more codified and, this digital world makes our behavior, more trackable with data, I think you're going to see a little bit more of that. My prediction, just based on a random set of reading, is I think the next decade is going to be the decade of sensors. So it'll be very interesting to see how things evolve. Okay, let's keep going. So breaking down into some findings from neuroscience. So just in the last 20 years, they've tracked that your brain interprets social pain as much the same as it does physical pain. So if someone says, I don't want you part of the group, is the same as me slapping you in the face. And when you feel rejected, all these things occur. You work more slowly, your test scores are lower, you can't remember things, you're not rational, you less self-control, all the stress eating. God, I know that when my wife got the job offer and we were leaving San Diego, my hometown, and moved to Chicago in the dead of winter in 2008, I think I ate all of my holiday candy like within a week and gained like 10 pounds, just like, oh my God, what does this mean? Like, I do not know what's happening, like so much uncertainty. And, that's where you want to take naps, you get lethargic. And so social pain, your body has not evolved fast enough to deal with this new world of social networks and social dynamics. And so right now your brain processes it exactly the same. There was an article where a guy was wearing his Fitbit when he got a message from his girlfriend that she dumped him. And over the course of the weekend, his Fitbit literally tracked, his heart breaking. So it was a sad little thing, but it showed how that was so true for him. Another finding is, breaking bias, is that we crave certainty, we crave information, even all the bad news that's going on. For a while I was logging on every day to see what the death rate count on COVID was. I realized I had to break that pattern. And again, as I said it before, when you can't provide new information, then provide certainty of when that information is coming. Because you cannot take bias out of people. People are naturally biased. We are a product of all the shortcuts of what we learn. Everything that we do is based on a shortcut, so we don't have to think everything through. Guess what? all of our experiences are not the total experiences. And so, and in fact, there's a power bias. The more power you have, the more bias you have, because you're taking more shortcuts. You're not taking everything into account. And so this is where process evaluation is very careful and critical, because, you can't take bias out of people, but you can take it out of the process. So I would appoint some people to look at the biases of your process. Who are you favoring? Who are you favoring with regards to how things get doled out for resources? Because people are constantly evaluating that with regards to threats and rewards in their own life.
Alex, I'm noticing what you're saying and looking back at some of the responses of how people currently choose who they pick as change agents. And I'm wondering if some of the themes in there might be related to some unknown biases.
Absolutely. My favorite is, so I did sales for the San Diego Padres and back in from 94 to 98. And, after they went to the World Series, I realized they weren't getting better. So I quit. I was also coming out of college. And the ticket sellers for the Padres are unionized. And there are people who had been working as a union ticket seller for like 20 plus years. And there were some guys who had been around a long time when I was there as a guy in my early 20s or whenever it was. And so I was really good at doing sales, and they asked me to do sales training with these union guys. And I took the most senior tenured guys, the cigar chomping guys who did not want to get on board with anything. I mean, two guys even got a fist fight over who got the better stool. And I wanted those guys to flip them, because I knew that if I flipped them, everyone was going to see like, well, if you got those guys to go, versus I could have easily had picked some friends who were going to be friendly to me. That's the easy get. And so I would be really cautious to look at, what's the bias that you have when you are selecting people. So breakout question. Why should we consider what people need to succeed during change? Vera?
What we're going to do now is we're going to go into breakout groups, and we'll have the groups discuss with each other reasons why each of you think that maybe we can start to think differently about what people need to succeed during a change based upon some of these biases and some of these threat versus reward systems that Alex has been talking about. I'm going to now, if you've never done this in Zoom, get ready for a treat because it's super cool. I'm going to create some breakout rooms here, and what will happen is you will all automatically get put into a completely different Zoom session, a sub-session. You'll be able to talk in your rooms with each other. We're going to have 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes, you'll get a little warning, and then you'll automatically get brought back into the main room, and then we'll talk about what you all came up with. Okay, so if you give me one moment. And here we go. Okay, and you'll see a prompt, and then you'll go into your rooms. And so I'd like you to discuss what this has made you reconsider. When you're in your breakout room, you can chat with each other, and the chat will be local to your breakout room.
All right, welcome back. We're going to allow each group to do a readout, but I will let Vera facilitate.
Okay, sounds great. So as we're going through the report backs, I'd like one person from each group to just give a quick summary of kind of the consensus of what people were saying. As that's happening, I'd also like to ask everyone about the timing of the breakout group, if you thought it was too much time, too little time. So in your participant window, you can pick an icon that says go slower. So use go slower if you think you needed more time in the breakout. Go faster if you needed less time in the breakout. Okay, so can we have a volunteer from any group? Let's start there. And you can unmute yourself. Kevin.
Yeah, I could jump in. we had I forget the individual's names, excuse me, but we had a good talk. I think we dove into the needs aspects from like Maslow to self-determination theory, and kind of just talked about, when the needs are slow or not being met as much, especially with a lot of fear coming in and things along that line. We're in survival mode. So thinking about transcendence or growth or 10 years down the line becomes a lot harder when people are kind of shutting down in those kind of basic survival-based needs.
Okay, beautiful. So is anyone that was not in Kevin's group who would like to share for their group?
Hey, this is Carl. I made a quick list of the things we discussed. We had Brian, Joanne, Gennaro, and myself in the group. We said one, use the process as a forcing function to make sure you're getting diverse voices and trying to overcome the biases. As Alex told us, right, create certainty where you can. If there are parts that aren't changing, you can identify what's staying the same. Transparency, giving the vision, having the leadership speak to that. Gennaro was mentioning, hey, it's more the path that people fear. It's the transition and the path, not necessarily the end point. So make sure you're helping them down the path. We talked about using different points of view on that path, letting people hear from voices that they already trust, and also that they're not going down that path alone. They have a team with them. They're not the only one going through that same path. So find where you can create teams that can share the burden together.
Sounds great, Carl. Okay, so will someone who wasn't in Kevin or Carl's group like to share for their group? How about Heath? Let's unmute you. There you go.
I knew you were going to call on me. I was like, oh, maybe if I look away.
You're right in the center of my Brady Bunch there. So,
well, what we were talking about a little bit in our group was that someone had already mentioned it, and when there is no certainty, people are left to kind of make up their own minds about things. So it's important to keep that two-way communication going. And I shared in my realm at the moment, I'm involved in multiple very large building moves and new builds up in Canada. So about 4,500 people in total. And things were supposed to start pretty much now, and everyone's locked down. So there's a big communication gap. So it's just a lot of trying to give people something that they actually know instead of just being left out to their own fears or concerns and that sort of thing.
All right. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay, so who else whose group has not spoken yet? Can we have a volunteer to talk about? I think we have 2 more groups. Anyone? Do any of my, all right, any of my, okay, let's go back to Alex.
Okay, cool. Great conversation, guys. I'm happy to stay on as long as you want to keep the conversation going. I do realize that we are reaching end of day here, but let's keep rolling into it. Let's get to the meat of this. So a quick recap of what we did before. Threats and rewards, they govern the brain. That's how the brain is set up. Threats, rewards. Biggest threats and rewards are social. We've gone from physical threats to social threats. And social and physical pain are intertwined. And so people feeling social pain, as I mentioned in the chat and sort of a breakout dialogue I had with Kevin, change makes holes in people. From Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when there's a lot of change going on, it's taking on the Band-Aid, ripping it off, taking on the Band-Aid, ripping it off. And, I feel that neuroscience can help fill those holes. We'll talk about how that is. So let's look at some of the change deliverables that we do. And that is, we do resistance to change. We do engagement, we do sponsorship, we do what's in it for me, benefit statements. And from a neuroscience perspective, change triggers in each of us a threat and a way response. And I think to be mindful of that and to figure out what are those things that motivate each person. Because again, we all, catalog and rate those differently. And with the engagement interactions, we want to move people towards that reward state. And that's very, very hard to do because people don't really care about rewards. They just want to avoid pain. They don't care about rewards. They just want to avoid pain. And with regards to sponsors, buy-in is hard because change threatens the status quo. And there's a lot of check the box like, oh, you do it, you go care for my people. And, getting them to buy in, we really need them to show and lead and really care for those people. And again, in this time of pandemic, it's been able to shift that conversation. The question is, can we sustain that beyond this? And it adds a level of precision to reveal our blind spots. Like we said, we have a lot of bias, and how can we be mindful of that bias? So, as we said before, there's threats and rewards. And in the middle, the question is always, what kind of change is this? And in absence of concrete information, the decision is always, it's probably bad news. And so, like I said in the chat, in absence of information, and this is not my quote, in absence of information, people connect the dots in the most pathological ways. People who said they're not creative, ask them to think what the boss is thinking, and they will give you the most wildest story ever. But engagement needs to be mindful of these tripwires that trigger that threat response. And so this is our job, is to help mitigate those tripwires. And we want to build some psychological safety so people are open to changing behavior. And that is not easy to do. So change needs people engaged. It's not static. It needs to be cultivated. But the big thing to start off with is people want to feel that they are part of something bigger than themselves. They want to know what that purpose is. Daniel Pink talks about, mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And as I was sharing in a breakout, I met him at the ACMP 2015, and he talked about purpose is really undersold, and it really drives people, and it really unites people. The next is ego or status. People are people encouraged to share what they know, and people like people who find them interesting. People who are tall know they're tall. People who are beautiful or handsome know they're beautiful or handsome. People who do stupid things know they're doing stupid things, but people want to know, do you find me interesting? Do you find that you're learning being around me? People want to be around people like that. The next is, do they have what they need to be effective? Are expectations clear? As work acknowledged? With regards to reward system, people really get quick into recognition and rewards, but that is step 2 and 3. Step 1 is just acknowledging the work. For instance, I acknowledge you all for being here today. I don't know if your engagement's any good, but you're here. Thanks for showing up. And half the time is, hey, thanks for all the work that you're doing, is an easy comment for a boss to say. It's not saying that you're doing great work or good work or even profitable work. Thanks for all the work that you're doing is a sentence that makes us feel good because you feel that you're part of the group and you feel that you're together. And that's that sense of equality that okay, I feel equal and that they get it. So let's get very specific. And this will be our takeaway slide. You'll get this as a follow-up. And this is putting that piece into a framework. And I call it make peace with change. So this is a mnemonic, and it's a way to look at tripwires. And this is not just for work. This is for family and friends, and this is for any interaction you have with another human. Any human with hair on their arms or shaved arms, you get to ask them these questions about purpose, ego, autonomy, certainty, and equality. And so when you're looking at the purpose, the question that you should be looking at with the group is, are we uniting around a shared goal? And how do we know that the goal is shared? And so a lot of times, the easy thing to do is put together a one-pager so that we can at least agree or disagree on the same things. And that's half the battle. And so knowing that what that agreement is very important. How can you boost people's ego with regards to their sense of self-esteem, self-respect, and self-confidence? Ego is usually seen as a negative thing, but ego is really that, that ego, superego, and id. And it goes back to that basics of psychology. What is your sense of self-respect and self-confidence, and how can you boost that for people? And that's a very fragile thing. Our egos are very delicate, and we all have one. Even the jerks that we don't like to work with, they have one too, and they want to feel special. How can you choose? Giving people a sense of control. Most change is taking away control from people. And that's just a fact of life. But by acknowledging that it's a sense of control and what that control is half the battle. Hey, guess what? That job, that 80-20, when you were on autopilot for 80% of the day, well, guess what? Now that's flipped. Now you're on autopilot for 20% of the day, and 80% of the day, you're not going to know what the hell is going on. So that sense of control is going to feel really weird, and let's talk about that. And then they can talk about that sense of purpose and that ego and where they are. You can talk about equality. You can talk about certainty, what's around the corner. You could say, just like we all are in this boat with the pandemic, what's around the corner? I don't know. But here's what we do know. We're going to do this together, and we're going to keep figuring it out as much as we can. And how can you show that you're not asking somebody to do something that you're not asking other people to do? That sense of fairness and equality is very innate. You know, my wife used to work at the San Diego Zoo, and you know, there's lots of studies done. If a primate was given a banana and the other one was given grapes and they really loved grapes, they didn't want the banana. They wanted grapes because now the bar had been raised. And so when resources are doled out, people pay attention who gets a new, better laptop, the better cell phone, the better places to sit. You know, we're very mindful of all these things. So this is the framework that I would like to do some role play with regards to how do you make peace with change? So if you look at this from the threat and reward response, you know, these little triangles on here are nothing more than moving up and down the fulcrum. Okay, do we have a strong sense of purpose? Yeah, the sense of purpose is pretty good. But their egos are really fragile because, man, that old system was really working for them, and now this is really going to take away some of their status. And control, oh, man, you're taking away all my control. This slider goes all the way over to the threat response. You're freaking me out. Certainty, oh, man, I don't really know, but it's probably not good. And fair, yeah, I guess it's fair. I guess we're all doing it. I guess that's not too bad. I guess it's kind of a reward. And we do this all the time. We have these sliding scales of that peace framework about how we are processing the world. And we're looking at this. Is this something that, you know, is going to make my fight or flight response trick in? Is my dopamine going to go down or up? You know, and you can see it. Like when you're not doing your best work, when things are not going well, you're sick, you're blowing your nose, you're not sleeping well. But, you know, you have more resilience, more creativity when you feel that you are in that reward state. And so what can you do to monitor people? And I would say do not assume anything. Do not assume that you know what is driving each person, because you will be surprised. You know, I use this framework with a client. I do consulting, and there was this bank doing a huge transformation, and a third of their job was going to be automated. And we were taking a huge status hit for some of these people. And so I basically went through this checklist and said, like, so from an ego status standpoint, this has got to be really painful. She's like, no, we're good with that. We just don't think it's fair. We just don't think this is an equal ask. You're asking our team to automate our tasks. Why do we got to change our job? And the thing is everybody in this organization had to do the same thing, but they just didn't think that they should even be asked to change at all. They just thought that the change should just go away. And it was very interesting that was the thing that fired them up. Was we did a lot more communications about equality and fairness, about how the entire organization was going through this, and suddenly they calmed down. And it was shocking to me, but again, it shows do not fail to guess what another person is going through. So let's get into another breakout and let's answer this question. And let's bring it home, because I want to hear what you guys think about this as we start to wrap this up. How do you bring this to your engagements? When you look at work, you know, we go through this all the time with regards to fight or flight, risk and rewards, threats and rewards, you know, who's invited, who speaks at meetings, social gatherings. Is this something with or without kids? Oh man, before I had kids, I did not want to go to any gatherings of people with kids. Now they got it with kids, but there's people without kids. Okay, it's going to be a different kind of party. You know, chores, I got 2 kids, division of labor. There's all those sorts of things that you do. So let's have that conversation. And Vera, want to break it up into the breakout group?
Okay, here we go. So what I'm realizing I could have done in the first breakout, but we're going to do it now, is the first item when you start your breakout is choose a person who's going to do the report back, so that it'll help us make that go quicker. And it's going to work. Got status
threats going on already. People are freaking out.
And you guys are pros at this right now. And I may or Alex may pop in to just observe. So just ignore the little man behind the curtain, as they say in The Wizard of Oz. We're just kind of checking out the conversation. So here we go.
Okay, I know we're at time, but I'll let you guys bring it on home with what you guys learned.
Sure, I'll go ahead and kick it off. We had a really good conversation. I think We both brought perspective from our personal experience, being, like Carol mentioned, being really passionate learners, but also the experience of using the one-on-one forums. We have an example from a manager perspective and how you really bring your direct reports in a comfortable space and continue asking more and more questions, bringing them to that comfortable space. How do you feel? And then at the end, how do you really engage in channeling those into action? And there's different perspective that you get from asking it within the group. But kind of the difference that you talked about between doing it in a group forum versus the one-on-one, and just by asking those Q&A sessions, asking how do you feel, all of a sudden bringing it into a different perspective and things that the manager or the two individuals in the conversation didn't hear, and using those to navigate through the change and kind of hear and be able to support them within the change.
Great. That sounds great.
Okay, who's next?
Something that our group talked about, it was really easy to kind of look at it in the work framework, if you will. It was, easy to apply the acronym piece to work setting, but when we tried to apply it to social or family, it was a little bit more strenuous. It was a little harder for us to kind of think of it in that terms. But I think we had some pretty fruitful discussion. A lot of it was, trying to figure out the kind of the smaller people, right? Smaller tasks. How do you recognize those things? How do you make those people feel included? If there's anything else anyone felt important in the group that they might want to share, please do so.
Cool.
And I think we have two more groups.
I can speak to our group. We talked about kind of in terms of work meetings, over inviting people and kind of trying to be more inclusive versus less inclusive, but looking back to our RACI charts and really trying to determine who are the big decision makers that we need to be there. And we also talked about kind of that emotional check-in importance, especially right now, and really making sure that we include people and just have that type of check-in as well.
Yeah. And I think we have one last group.
I can summarize kind of quickly. Our group applied the peace model to the pandemic, and we kind of went through each one and talk about strategies that have been used to appease all of us with the different strategies like purpose, uniting us behind this purpose of sheltering at home so that everybody could be safe. And there are other examples where people are starting to give milestones in terms of expectations, under what conditions will the economy open, so people are feeling more certain. And also the other pieces of the model were not really followed or executed in a productive way, so people are resisting change.
Excellent. Okay, and I lied. There is one more group. I was not counting correctly because we had 5.
I think the headline for us was it was a bit more challenging to apply this personally than professionally. It seems to fit more professionally. And so we used some examples of even just having a party. How would we go about planning the party? But I think we found it more challenging.
Yeah. I think it can be challenging. For me, I just happen to be in a situation where we're moving, and I find myself forgetting to use what I already know as far as our teenagers and how this change of moving affects them. And, I'm somewhat new to these children's lives, and so how that affects them. And sometimes I struggle and I get frustrated and I think, wait, I have all the tools. Why am I not applying them here? Okay, so I'll let Alex wrap up. Thank you all for sharing and sharing back.
Yeah, no, really, really great takes on this. And especially, I apologize for not having the slide up so you can reference it in your discussion. It was probably a little harder to do. But in terms of, bringing that hard facts to soft skills, the one thing I would say is things like finance or accounting. It's very easy when numbers are low to make numbers go up or make numbers go down. What's really hard is to get people to care and to figure out what those triggers are that drive people to care more, and to figure out and ask the questions like, are they aware of the purpose? Do they have a purpose with regards to what we are doing, and attend to their ego and give them that sense of control and, a little bit of certainty, and to tell them, is it really equal? And maybe they don't perceive it as equal as you do. And so I think to have those conversations, but, to talk about neuroscience as a way of informing conversations, because some people will be dismissive as engagement as, well, we don't really need group therapy here. Like, we're not here to do the group hug stuff. And so, but I think in this time of pandemic, leading with empathy has been a big topic. And hopefully this is something that sticks, and hopefully we are ones that driving it. But if we bring the research, those hard facts to those soft skills, hopefully it brings credibility to all of us. And I really appreciate your participation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Alex. I'd like to remind everyone quickly that our next event is on May 5th, and that's going to be a virtual happy hour. I'm going to be sending a survey to everyone who attended, and please, it'll be quick and easy, and it's really a gift to us, and it helps us know what to do to serve you, the community, better. If we know what your wants and needs are, what works, what doesn't work. So please take just a moment to do that. I'd like to thank all my volunteers and the SoCal San Diego, or the ACMP SoCal board members for helping out and facilitating, and the San Diego volunteers. What we're going to do is we'll take just a 1-minute break, and then we'll move into the networking portion. So I will break people out into breakout groups again, and then I have a couple prompt questions, but this is completely free form. So if you go away from the prompt, that's fine. If you take it over and make it your own, that's completely fine. But we'll take a minute. Go ahead and grab yourself a drink. It's after 5 o'clock, or go take a little bio break, or put a pacifier in your child's mouth, or whatever it takes. And I'll assign you into breakout groups in a minute.